We'll start with now Darragh Browne from Blockspin, who's going to talk about his experiences and a beginner's guide to Bitcoin, Bitcoin Bootcamp.
Hi, so my name is Darragh. We started Blockspin around March of this year, and we're building lots of different Bitcoin apps, basically. So how many people here have Bitcoins? Ooh, quite a lot. There's a lot more than Hacker News last week, so that's really good. So the important thing about Bitcoin, and I apologize if I'm glossing over some things here, it's kind of a beginner's type journey. So it's more than just a currency. Bitcoin is a protocol, it's a set of rules, and it is a currency. That currency is a means of exchange, but the beauty about it being a protocol and kind of an open standard and set of rules means that it's just like cash with APIs. You can program stuff on top of it. And why is that important? Well, there's 2.5 billion people in the world that don't have access to financial services, which is a fair amount, and that's pretty much due to the fact that organizations who run financial services companies won't give them access, either through infrastructure problems or they just don't trust them in some kind of way. So also, I mean, if we move on to the next slide, I call it Finance 3.0, which is a bit cheesy, but 1.0 would be the coins you have in your pocket, coins and notes. 2.0, credit card, debit cards, and 3.0 is cryptocurrency. It's the first time ever, as far as I know, that you can exchange value with anyone else in the world instantaneously, with no intermediary and pretty much no transaction fees. And that's really important. All you need is access to the internet and some kind of mobile device, some kind of computing device. And in the future, you probably won't even need access to the internet either, because you'll be able to add up those transactions and broadcast them later on. It's also really important because people in Western nations also send lots of money to other countries. International remittance last year was worth about $500 billion. And I'd imagine there are a lot of fees associated with that, using bank transfers, Western unions, and just having to wait for the money to go through. So there's huge opportunity in exchanging value across borders internationally. Bitcoin began on 31st of October 2008. Well, that's when it was first announced by somebody or some people called Satoshi Nakamoto. As you're probably aware, no one knows who they are or he or she is. And Satoshi published the white paper on 31st of October 2008, which outlines the protocol. And then in January of 2009, the first transaction happened. So there was this quote, Chancellor on the brink of the second bailout of the banks, which may or may not have been political. But what it did do was timestamp the first Bitcoins that were ever generated, and to prove that no Bitcoins had been mined or generated before that point in time. In 2010, the first real-world Bitcoin transaction that we know of happened, which was for a pizza between two members of the Bitcoin Talk Forum. That was for 10,000 Bitcoins, which in today's money is worth about £600,000. Probably the most expensive pizza ever bought, and I hope it tastes nice. So then moving on to 2011, Bitcoin reached parity with the dollar in about February of 2011. And then by June, it reached $36 a Bitcoin. Just after that point, it corrected slightly. And then yeah. And then the biggest exchange, Mt. Gox, had their database compromised, which meant that somebody tried to push the price all the way to zero. Various other services got hacked, confidence was lost, and we move on to this year. So the first little bump here was 2011, and as you can see, pretty insane stuff happened this year. It started off around $13 in January, reaching a peak of 266. And at that point, all Bitcoins in existence were worth about $2.5 billion. and it's corrected since, but the growth, so right now it's hovering around $80, $90 a Bitcoin with a market cap of about $1 billion. So there's still significant value there and significant ways of kind of doing exchange. So in order to use Bitcoin, you need a wallet. And what a wallet is essentially a collection of public addresses and private keys. So the top one is your Bitcoin address. You publish that publicly, and you can other people can send money to that address. The private key is the thing that you use to sign transactions to prove that you have access to those coins in order to spend them. You don't want to lose your private keys. If you lose your private keys, you've lost your Bitcoins and you're pretty much screwed. If your private keys are stolen, same thing, you're pretty much screwed. So you want to be careful about how you store those private keys, so how you store your wallet. Also, what wallet provider you use. You need to use a trusted online wallet if you're using an online wallet. But the best thing would be ideally to look after your own wallet on your own machine, keep it encrypted. But even then, you should probably keep multiple copies of it because sometimes the wallet file can get corrupted and so on. So in the long run, I would say it's probably going to move towards everyday use, using kind of web wallets, apps type things, where you trust one company with a few Bitcoins to do your day-to-day spending. And then people who have lots of Bitcoins will be storing their wallets offline, and well, they do at present, or even printing them out on paper and putting them into a safe in cold storage. Now, the network itself works on consensus, which means that all the nodes need to agree with what one particular node is doing. And so it means that if one kind of rogue member of the Bitcoin network spoofs some transactions and posts something to everyone else that isn't right, the rest of the network will just reject it. If you have, it would take over half of the Bitcoin, sort of half the computing power on the Bitcoin network to try to break that consensus. But even then, it wouldn't stop. You wouldn't be able to spoof historical transactions. You'd only be able to stop transactions going through and possibly spend your own money twice. So now, the way the consensus works is by using something called the blockchain. The blockchain is a universal ledger of every single Bitcoin transaction that has happened since the beginning of time. All main nodes on the network, so if you're using a web wallet provider, they will have a main node. If you're using the Bitcoin software on your computer, that has a copy of the blockchain on it. And the blockchain is used to ensure that other transactions, transactions that come in make sense with transactions that have happened in the past. I'm kind of glossing over there, but anyway. Right, so moving on to mining. There's kind of three functions to mining, the way I see it. So mining is used to distribute new coins. It's also used to process transactions on the Bitcoin network. So miners get a block, and they put a number of transactions into a block, and as a reward for processing those transactions, they get some new Bitcoins. They can then do whatever they like with those Bitcoins afterwards. So it's to distribute new coins, process transactions, and also defend the network against attack. So the higher the computing power is on the network, the higher the hashing power, the more protected the network is from attack, from somebody coming in with half the computing power and trying to spend their own money twice or stop other transactions going through. And it would probably cost hundreds of millions of dollars to get half of the computing power on the network at the moment, and that's only increasing because mining hardware is becoming more and more sophisticated all the time. So total Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, and that's due to happen around 2140. At the beginning, every time a miner solved a block, they would get 50 Bitcoins as a reward. Every 4 years, that halves. So at the moment, it's 25 Bitcoins. and it will halve again and halve again and halve again until all the Bitcoins that are ever released, ever, are in existence in 2140. So it's a very kind of smooth curve, and blocks are designed to be solved on average every 10 minutes. So the way that happens is that essentially a miner gets a number of transactions that they need to put into a block, and then they have a hash of information that's in that block, which includes information about the transactions, it includes information about the time, and information about the previous block. And what they're trying to do is guess a number that is less than a target number. So it's pretty much probability. Miners are just guessing numbers after numbers after numbers after numbers until they reach the right number, which is less than the target number. Every 2 weeks, that probability is reset by the network in order to ensure that a block is generated on average every 10 minutes. So as more computing power gets added to the network, the probability of finding a block gets harder. If the network for some reason has less computing power, then it will become easier in order to regulate the supply of new Bitcoins. So because it's very profitable at the moment to do mining, it's pretty much an arms race. So you have companies coming out with more and more sophisticated hardware. Just last week, a company raised over $1 million worth of Bitcoins because they figured out that, well, they think they have a design for a chipset that will be much more efficient than anything else on the market at the moment. And I mean, there's thousands of pounds being generated in value every day. And so at the moment, while the price is still reasonably high, and hopefully it will get higher and higher, it's just an arms race to get the most sophisticated hardware to solve the most blocks and get the most reward, essentially. Why bother using Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin's, it behaves a lot like cash. So you either have it or you don't. With credit cards and debit cards, you have the risk of chargebacks. So if I was to steal 100 credit cards this evening and spend money on various stuff around the internet, then by the time you phone up and say that those credit cards have been stolen, then the credit card company will go back to the merchant and ask for some of that money back from the merchant. That really can't happen with Bitcoin because I've either got those Bitcoins or I don't. If I lose them some way, well, that's kind of my problem. So it's great for merchants, and it's just also a much faster, easier way of doing international exchange. There's also huge amounts of new possibilities with Bitcoin. People are time-stamping information into the blockchain. So the blockchain, once a miner has solved a block and put it into the chain, that can't really be changed, or it can't be changed at all. So people are using it to timestamp intellectual property and all sorts of other stuff. Now, you've also got the concept of colored coins, which is where you take, a Bitcoin is divisible to 100 million units. So the idea around colored coins, and this will be a new open standard on top of Bitcoin, is you take a very small part, 100 millionth, one Satoshi, and you issue it as something else, or a group of Satoshis, and you issue it as something else, i.e. shares, bonds. You could do other currencies, or IOUs, all sorts of stuff. Anywhere where you can store value as a digital asset. You could even do tickets with colored coins. So what you need to do with colored coins is pretty much attach identity of the issuer and information about the terms of what you're issuing. And if people trust that, like they trust Bitcoin, then they'll use it as a means of exchange. I see it as kind of an application layer on top of Bitcoin, kind of like HTTP is to TCP, if you're going to get geeky about it. Another thing that's coming up is payment requests. So this means that I, as a merchant, can request a payment from somebody else, and they approve or deny that payment. Now, the cool thing about this is you could use it for social commerce. For example, Glastonbury, when they go to release all their tickets, they could publish a payment request. You download that payment request into your Bitcoin wallet. You approve that payment request, and you're good to go. You could also use it for subscription-type payments as well, where I give a merchant certain permissions that they can take out 1 Bitcoin a month from my account, and they send out payment requests into my wallet that automatically gets approved, and they get the Bitcoins. So payment requests are coming quite soon. It will take a little bit longer for people to start implementing it into merchant services, but it will get there reasonably quickly. Multi-signature transactions is also something that is possible in Bitcoin, that to do it in existing financial services is a lot trickier, and that's simply because Bitcoin is an open standard. You could do it in an existing system, but it would probably have to be a closed box, i.e. one company operating with one service, whereas with multi-signature transactions essentially means that it takes more than one person to sign off on a payment. So you can imagine using it in a charity situation where they have a trust and the board needs to sign, like 3 or 5 members of the board need to sign off on spending money from the trust. So then three or five of them put in their keys, the money gets released, and then they can do what they like with it. It can also be used for escrow, where nobody holds the money. So if I'm doing a deal with somebody else, and so somebody's building me a website, for example, we both choose an independent third party to verify that that website has or has not been delivered. I put my funds into an escrow, which is just held in limbo by the Bitcoin network, and it takes 2 out of 3 to sign out. So either me and the person who developed the website agree, and we both sign and the money gets paid, or there's some kind of disagreement and the independent third party has to make a decision of which way it goes. But the advantage of Bitcoin is that it doesn't have to be held by that independent third party. They just have to make the decision. So now the important thing is, if you don't have Bitcoins, where do you store them? The best place to sign up if you're a beginner is blockchain.info/wallet, which is probably the most secure online wallet provider so far. Or you can go to the Bitcoin website, bitcoin.org, and download the Bitcoin client. Now, if you have a Bitcoin address, that's great. If you don't, then I suggest you go to Blockchain Info, sign up on the wallet, because basically at the end of this evening, we'll give away 10/10ths of a Bitcoin. So if you tweet Bitcoin at Blockspin with your Bitcoin address, then I'll go through the tweets at the end of the night and pay 0.1 Bitcoins to 10 random people. So that should be quite fun. Now, where to buy them? If you don't get 0.1 tonight, then the best place at the moment, I would say, is probably Bitstamp, which is a European exchange. I know that some guys in the room are working on a UK exchange, which would be awesome when it happens. But Mt. Gox is the biggest exchange in the world, but people are currently experiencing problems kind of getting their money out of Mt. Gox. You can get Bitcoins in and out, that's absolutely fine. But I would say go to Bitstamp, or Local Bitcoins is a website where you meet up with random people, and there's kind of trust ratings, eBay-style ratings. You can find people and you meet up with them or do bank transfers and do that. But Bitstamp, I sent a payment to them last week, and it went through in 2 days. Just do a euro transfer, and jobs are good, basically. Places to go if you want to find out more. Blockchain Info, if you're a developer, they do have an API, which is decent for prototyping stuff. And you should definitely look at the Bitcoin wiki, and the forum as well. There's lots of information in the forum, bitcointalk.org. So you should just start reading. Bitcoin's like a rabbit hole. You kind of discover it, you have some, and then you keep reading and you kind of go further down that hole. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, just start reading and start getting into it. If you need to ask any questions or interested in anything to do with Bitcoin, feel free to drop me an email, hello@blockspin.com. And you can also follow us on Twitter @blockspin. Does anyone have any questions? And at the moment, we're working on a marketplace product that will hopefully provide a bit more trust in the Bitcoin ecosystem. We're also very interested in color coins, and have some ideas about helping people issue securities and IOUs in that area as well. Yeah, so the way color coins essentially works from a high level is if an issuer will state who they, so you create a transaction which has a number of Bitcoins in it or a number of portions of Bitcoins. In that transaction, you add some extra information about the issuer, who is issuing it, and also information about the term. So what is it they're issuing? If it's a share, it could easily be tickets. So, or it could be vouchers, for example. It could be Marks and Spencer's issuing £20 vouchers that are tradable that you then print off as a QR code and put in an envelope to give to your mum for Christmas. You could, all sorts of cool stuff with color coins. But the standard is still being developed at the moment, so it's not quite there yet, but it's an inevitability in my opinion. Yeah, here. So the question was, what's my thought on alternative cryptocurrencies such as Litecoin and Ripple? So I think they're great. Ripple is slightly different from most alternative cryptocurrencies because it's not open source so far, and it's issued by a company who are holding on to most of them at the moment. I have Ripples, or XRP as they're called. The other cryptocurrencies, I think, are where in mining, the miners solve problems to create strings of large prime numbers, which has some theoretical benefit in number theory. And Litecoin is very similar to Bitcoin, although it uses a different kind of algorithm in the mining process. But I think they're great. I have lots of altcoins, and I think they're quite fun. Yeah. Back there. So the question was, the features being added, are they just the beginning or a series of extra features? Do you mean features of the Bitcoin protocol? Yeah, I think, I mean, color coins will be kind of a base system for issuing different things on top of Bitcoin, and then what people do with that is up to them. The Bitcoin protocol, there's various feature sets being worked on all the time, specifically like the payment request type stuff. And I don't see that innovation stopping. Obviously, where you've got a big open source project, there needs to be kind of consensus in the community of whether they're the right things to put in the protocol and so on. But it's inevitable that new things will continue to be added. Yeah? In theory, I mean, there is a concept in Bitcoin called taint, which is the association of your Bitcoins with other Bitcoin addresses, as far as I understand it. But in terms of color coins, well, you could issue them and, well, hold on to them, but I don't know that they could never be spent again because they are just Bitcoins pretty much. If you sent them to someone else and it was not in a color coin wallet, then they could just be exchanged like Bitcoin. Yeah, so the question was if some Bitcoins are stolen, potentially they could be marked and then the network wouldn't process them. That would probably happen at the exchange or miner level. So addresses would be blacklisted. Addresses that hold stolen coins would be blacklisted. And then miners would potentially not process transactions associated from those addresses or coins that came from those addresses. Also, exchanges may not accept them, but equally, you could just have somebody set up a whole new mining rig that doesn't abide by those rules, and those coins would then be processed. I'm of the opinion that at the moment, those rules should not be in place because they're too restrictive. And but in theory, you could, at the miner level, governments could start to freeze assets and stop stolen money being transferred and so on. But they would need most of the miners to implement those rules. Yeah. Richard, yeah?
Blockspin is doing precisely what you've got 2 or 3 applications out on the web.
Yeah.
I understood that you were actively helping start Bitcoin companies. So that sounds more like an incubator. But so what's exactly going on?
Richard asked what's going on with Blockspin. Are we an incubator or what we're doing? So we started out off life as an incubator. We still are. The idea is, there's just 2 of us and some kind of help every now and again from other people. The idea is to get lots of different things out in the marketplace, kind of see what sticks, push them, see what people find useful, put the ones that people aren't using in the bin, and nurture the ones that people find useful. Yeah. So the question was, are there still opportunities for small startups, or have all the opportunities been hoovered up by big companies and there's no space anymore? I think that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what's possible with Bitcoin and the Bitcoin protocol. Most of the companies that are doing quite well at the moment are pretty much copies of other companies that exist in the existing ecosystem. So exchanges, you've had currency exchanges for a long time. And merchant services, you've had merchant services on the web for a long time. They're just, and shops and so on that accept Bitcoin. You've got Amazon, for God's sake. I think most of the companies that exist, they're just applying old rules to a new currency. And where things will get really exciting is where we start to use the new rules to create new products that are based on those rules rather than the existing stuff that we're used to. So I think there's massive opportunities, but it's still very early days, and we need those companies that exist at the moment, like the exchanges, to build a bridge with the existing economy. But as time goes on, you could have more of a closed-loop Bitcoin economy, but you need the bridges to get in and out. But there's huge opportunities for doing all sorts of stuff. You just got to use your imagination. In the middle. So the question was whether the originators who came from possibly more of a counterculture background, people involved in the early days of Bitcoins as institutional money and type people come in, will they go elsewhere? I don't know. You'll have to ask them, to be honest. I think people are in things for various reasons, and if it becomes something that they don't believe in, then they'll move on. If there's still something for them in it, then they'll stick around. But the beauty about Bitcoin is that it has kind of if you talk about anonymity, kind of protecting your identity and stuff, it has the full spectrum of complete anonymity, if you want it to be, or complete transparency, and anything in between. And that's a really good thing for people who need to remain anonymous for various reasons, and also who need to be completely transparent because they're running a charity, or perhaps a government institution wants to make all their transactions and accounts completely accountable. That'd be awesome. So there's various possibilities in the area, and I can't really. I got interested in Bitcoin in 2011, so I probably wasn't one of the most early adopters. And I guess I don't come from a super counterculture background, but I do think the existing financial system is very broken. and that Bitcoin can help resolve that in various ways. Yeah.
You mentioned like this idea of a closed loop compared to like building bridges with like the existing ecosystem of finance. How do you see that when like people are like hoping the Bitcoin price is going to rise and we're just going to hold on to some for now and we're strong hands in the game and we're not actually getting out of this. We are just being this bridge and we're not actually making a closed loop ecosystem. How do you see that?
So the question was about being a closed loop economy and how lots of people who have Bitcoins want to hold on to them and not spend them. So I think, well, everyone has their price to start with. If people want to exchange out for a standard currency, everyone has a price if the Bitcoin price goes through the roof that they will exchange out to, possibly. Also, the closed loop economy is already happening. You've got lots of early adopters who have got their Bitcoins. Now they're investing them in other Bitcoin companies, and mining projects is a great example. And people investing Bitcoins in Bitcoin stuff. There's not enough places on the street where you can spend your Bitcoins, but there's plenty of people doing great projects that will accept your Bitcoins as payments in exchange for kind of equity or profit share in that. So I think you've already got the beginnings of a closed loop economy happening, but the bridge is also needed because you need, if people want to take their existing money and go into Bitcoin, that you need facilities for that, and equally some people might want to go out. You still have to, unfortunately, at the moment you can't pay your rent and bills and so on in Bitcoin, so you need to exchange them out every now and again if you're living on it full time. Cool. All right, well, thank you very much.